there's a reason why Phil's asking the question.
Yeah, I'm
here.
glad you did.
And let's talk, like, what kind of pressure is this team under? Because you've lost in the postseason for 5 straight years. And only one team can win it all. And his explanation of Kansas City's everyone's problem and all that makes sense. But the RamosLaw.com text that I want to read, it says, he kind of puts it in quotes as if Chris Brown was saying it. He said, Sean McDermott has a job for life, but the one thing that could beat us is McDermott getting outcoached. And that's kind of like...
Really? Like, that's a great way of putting it. That's crazy. Yeah.
It's different. It is a different mindset. It's a different organizational standard. And one that, by the way, let me just say this too, and we're going down this direction anyway. The organizational standard was set by Pat Bowlen.
Yeah.
For decades. And he'd be asked at the start of a season, hey, what's the goal this year? And he'd say, go undefeated and win a Super Bowl.
Win.
Like, and he would literally say, like, go undefeated.
Win, 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 win.
And when you fall short of that, and even Mike Shanahan ended up, falling to the lack of not meeting the standard that he was a part of setting. He was eventually shown the door. We do not know quite yet. I think I know. I can theorize or speculate, but we don't quite know for sure what the organizational standard will be under Greg Penner. Now, we know that the embarrassment of the Hackett era, one of his first major moves was firing the football coach, so that's some indication.
Before the season was over.
Correct, and they did not want to do that, but you got embarrassed. You embarrassed our brand. You embarrassed our franchise. Therefore, I have to do something I actually don't want to do and take your head here before the season's out. We don't know what it is yet, though, from a winning standpoint, and what will be for Greg Penner good enough or not good enough in the years to come. I know what it is in Buffalo. I know what it is.
Not good enough.
I don't know what it is here with the new ownership group that is still very, 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 very new in the big picture.
Well, when you're a CEO of a company, because that's who Greg Penner is, he's a CEO that took on the opportunity to buy a team out, and now he's an owner of an NFL team. The number one goal when you're putting a bunch of money and you invested a bunch of money into an organization is winning. And when you're having success but you're not at the mountaintop, and so like Greg Penner is getting with other owners that are having success, you don't think he looks at it like, man, I'm kind of embarrassed because I can't get a Super Bowl, or I'm kind of embarrassed because we win but we're not good enough to win the Super Bowl? At some point, you're saying enough's enough. Like, I want to win. And I think Greg Penner wants to win. That's why he has put so much money into the organization. That's why he has put so much money into the players and making sure they're ready to go, whether it's because of the nutrition and getting them the right food, whether it's paying for a new football field because the other football field, like the grass out there, is not good enough. Whatever it takes to win, Greg Penner is willing to do. He's willing to cough up the money for this team, for this organization to be successful. And that's why we should all be optimistic about the Denver Broncos winning a lot of games in the future.
Yeah, and I know that I am. And I know most of Broncos country is. And I think that, you could make a very fair argument. And I would, by the way. I would. And I think it's a winning argument. And that's just my opinion. I think you could make a winning argument that Greg Penner and the Broncos ownership group is the most valuable member of the Broncos operation. Is Sean Payton in Denver without Greg Penner?
No, he's not. But when I was thinking about this question, Sean Payton would have had the opportunity no matter what if Greg Penner decided to give it to him or not because of his resume.
Opportunity here or around the league?
Here. Because Sean Payton's resume is successful. Sean Payton's resume is all about winning. He has before he got to the Denver Broncos, he had a 63% winning percentage. He won 152 games. This is what the Saints. He won 152 games and lost 89.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
Fantastic, yeah.
He went to 8 playoff games. He won a Super Bowl. So Greg Penner ended up choosing Sean. But Sean would have, I feel deep down inside, Sean would have had the opportunity because of his resume. And then I go back to saying, well, Greg wanted Jim Harbaugh. Greg wanted DeMeco Ryans first, which were all great decisions because DeMeco Ryan is doing well. But Sean, I think, Zach, I believe Sean would have been able to have that opportunity because of his resume and who he knows.
So here's what I'll say. I think that Sean would have maybe still had the opportunity in Denver. I just don't know if Sean would be open to Denver without this ownership group. Because after that football game on Sunday, where the Broncos punched their ticket, all right? The Broncos punched their ticket. This is who he said he gave the game ball to. This is from the locker room after the game, or Sean, I guess, at the podium reflecting on who he gave the game ball to.
So the game balls today went to ownership. They've been tremendously supportive. I've been to a number of pro teams, but I told the players, you don't get to pick a lot of times where you end up, but you guys are at a good spot. And this is a group that cares about you. They talk about it. I hear it. And they're very consistent. And I think in today's pro sports, I think it's probably one of the bigger indicators of success. And I know for me personally, when I went through this process, that meant a lot to me relative to where. And I said that it wasn't like I was looking to choose to join Patrick Mahomes in this division. But the ownership group here was the reason. And so, yeah, they got the game balls.
I legitimately believe him when he says the ownership was that important.
Well, money talks.
Well, they had to overpay him.
Yeah.
They gave him it's the third biggest contract for a head coach in the NFL in the history of the sport after only Belichick and Andy Reid. And then they had to trade a draft pick for him.
Yeah.
As well, first-round draft pick. I do not believe that Sean Payton is the – well, I'll say it like this, and there's no way of me knowing this for sure, okay? So I'm speculating.
And we're happy it worked out no matter what.
Oh, yes. No question about it. No question about it. But I'll say this. If the Broncos – I guess I'll ask the question instead of definitively say it. Would Sean Payton have taken this job if it wasn't this ownership group running it and it was still the trust?
Oh, no.
I think the answer is
no.
no.
Oh, no, yeah. I like, you don't even have to think. Why would Sean take a job where you don't have an owner and things are just discombobulated? Like, literally, guys, when I was with the Denver Broncos, we had no owner. And there wasn't a lot of structure because of that. The owner was not there to hold everybody accountable.
Yes, that right there.
Greg Penner is holding everybody accountable. Greg Penner is showing up to every meeting, every practice. And so what does that tell me? It tells me that the owner cares. Pat Bowlen cared about his organization, and that's why the Denver Broncos, when Pat Bowlen was the owner, won a lot of games, won Super Bowls. Greg Penner is the same way. He cares about this organization. He wants to win. And, yes, that's why Sean decided to come to the Denver Broncos, because Greg Penner has a lot of money. Greg Penner has a vision in Sean and believes in Sean. And look at us now. We're in the playoffs.
That accountability word.
Yeah.
That accountability word. I wonder if things would have slipped as far as they slipped in that era of the Broncos trust. And when I say that, I don't even mean to put it all on, because when you say the trust, when you say the trust, you're talking about like three human beings. It was Joe Ellis. It was a guy named Rich Slifka and his wife, Mary Kelly.
Yeah.
Typically, you don't have married people a part of a three-person trust. That's a conflict of interest. It was a bad setup here.
A little weird.
It was a bad setup here in Denver. But I do wonder if there was a legit owner who was ever present. And when I say ever present, that man, Greg Penner, is ever present. I have not been out to a training camp practice when he wasn't there. He's out there at OTAs.
He's at every game?
Every single game. You see the videos from the war room in the draft.
Yeah.
There's Greg Penner and his wife.
And his wife.
They do not miss a thing. And I think that there is something to be said for just the person in charge just being physically present. If the boss is never around, and believe me, you go around these NFL situations, it's not like this everywhere. And I wonder if the Broncos football operation would have eroded to the level that it eventually did if there was just a single person in charge.
Well, you need order. You need some kind of structure, some kind of order where it's like, hey, you're starting to slip. I'm holding you accountable. Just like us here, Zach, we hold each other accountable. You're like, hey, Phil, like, we got to pick it up. You have to have somebody over your shoulder doing that. You have to have somebody over George Payton's shoulder saying, hey, look, you messed up a couple times, but that can't happen again. And now George is on eggshells. Now George is like, I have to put my best foot forward. Sean's the same way. Sean's like, you gave me all this money. You trusted me. And now it's my turn to show you guys why you should trust me, why you did give me all this money. And so you're holding me accountable because you have given me all this money. And so I want to work for you guys. So Greg Penner being present, because a lot of times it's just being there and showing up,
the shadow
showing
of
face.
It's the shadow of leadership.
Being respectful, talking to your players. I mean, the owner probably knows, Greg Penner probably knows every single player's name in that locker room right now.
Yes, I
That's
believe
something
that.
that wasn't going on with the Denver Broncos when I was a part of that organization.
Let me ask you this, and this is, I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, but the reason I am is because you've mentioned it in the past, so I feel comfortable enough to ask you again. How much was John Elway around at the end? At the end of his tenure, was when you were playing for the Denver Broncos.
I truly feel like John cashed out. He was clocked out. I think for John, it was like, I got us a Super Bowl. I'm tired. And nobody held John accountable. John, a great quarterback, brought us a Super Bowl as a general manager. But when it comes to having to re-up and show out again, yes, you won the Super Bowl, but can you do it again?
Yeah, and I have no doubt that during those years, he was way more present and active and invested into the team than he was at the end, given by some of the things that you've shared of like his coming and going.
For sure, but like the thing with I feel like what happened with Elway was the accountability part. Nobody held John Elway accountable when he messed up on the draft, when he didn't draft Josh Allen, when he didn't bring back somebody like Shaq Barrett, right? Like just making little decisions. When you go out there and you pay for Joe Flacco and that doesn't pan out, and so you get rid of him, but you're still paying the bill for it. When you bring in Case Keenum and you get rid of him after you paid him a lot of money and you're still paying the bill for it, and you're behind the 8 ball because you've paid all these quarterbacks money that's not a part of the team, that hurts you.
Yeah.
You know, when you bring in Paxton Lynch and that doesn't work out.
And Phil, those are like football things you're pointing to. What I'm thinking of, and I'm not all that.
You're
all
thinking
that
about just like walking into the building and having a conversation. That wasn't Elway.
Well, I'm talking about like I don't think it's normal for an NFL GM to be showing up to work in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, like there were times, a lot of times, and I don't want to throw Elway on the best because he's done great things.
He's
for us.
He's the biggest name.
There are times where we're at practice at 2:00 in the afternoon. Elway's just arriving to the facility and he's leaving at 3.
And that doesn't happen when you have a Greg Penner who is in the building. He doesn't need to say, "Hey, make sure you're here by 9 o'clock in the morning." It doesn't need to be said.
And I think for rookies, I guarantee Greg Penner is having conversations with Bo Nix.
Yes.
When we were in the building, my rookie class, I don't know how many of us had a conversation truly with Elway. Now, Elway was there here and there. He'll walk down the hall, say, "How are you doing?" But you can feel when it's like, are you meaning it or are you just saying it because we're crossing paths and we're locking eyes? But do you truly mean it? Like, we're part of this organization. We're part. You brought us here.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to know a little bit more about us? And I don't think that was the case.
Well, at the end of the day, and I did not mean to steer this into like a bag on John session, but
John has done a lot. He's a legend here, and he's done a lot.
He's done the most. You can say he's done the most, but two things can be true at the same time. At the end there, things slipped badly. And that's what happens.
I got my contract done, too. I just got to put it out there.
I
just had to shoehorn that one in there.
He said he would take a look at it.
A long look, right? He's still looking at it.
Well, it just illustrates. It just illustrates how far the Broncos football operation had slipped.
Yeah.
And to go back to what I said at the top, I think that you could make a winning argument, and that's my opinion, that Greg Penner is the most valuable member of this Broncos operation, because I do not believe that the trust or a less flat out filthy rich owner would want to overpay for a guy like Sean Payton the way that this ownership group did. And so I do not believe that Sean Payton is the coach of the Denver Broncos, judging by his own words that he shared. And that's not recency bias. When he was out of coaching for a year and working for Fox, he was on with Colin Cowherd, and he was like, you wonder why certain franchises can have all the talent in the world and they never win. And he's like, you look at other franchises and their stability, and he was talking about ownership. And I think in his own mind's eye, he was thinking about the Chargers and all the loaded Chargers teams through the years. But you hear these stories, these horror stories about Chargers ownership. And I think that he was only going to agree to go to an organization who was all in on football, who cared deeply about winning and not just making money. Every NFL franchise makes money. It's the king of American sports. But he's like, where can I go that's got some history, some legacy to it, and has a solid ownership group? And I do not believe that was the case 4 or 5 years ago. So I don't think Sean Payton is coaching this team without this ownership group.
And this is the thing, too, with Greg Penner that I admire. Greg Penner doesn't act like he knows a bunch of football. He's learning every single day. But you know what Greg Penner has done a great job of doing? Taking a step back and letting his coaches coach, letting his general manager make his money, and just kind of asking questions, kind of showing up, appearing, learning about football, giving his advice. But then if the advice is not taken like he thinks it should be taken, and not getting butt hurt, like things like that. You know who I'm thinking of? That's so involved. Who's an owner that's so involved that he gets in his own way, and they probably would never win because of it. Jerry Jones.
Sure. Oh,
Jerry Jones has all the money in the world.
Yeah.
But he's so involved that it's kind of disgusting.
Yeah. In
that a coach can't really coach. And I think for Sean, it's like, hey, you got to let me do my job. And then when Greg Penner agreed, hey, and I'm just speculating, but if Greg Penner agreed to let go of Russell Wilson, if it didn't work out, that's a big step for Greg Penner, because it's like, man, I'm paying this quarterback a lot of money.
Right.
And you're telling me if it doesn't work out and you can't work with him,
yes,
I have to get rid of him and still pay the bill. And he still agreed to do it pretty much.
He did. And you're striking on the second chord of this franchise and why it's in such a good place. In a way that it wasn't for years. You could and again, I think it's a winning argument, say that Bo Nix is not here if Greg Penner's not here. Greg Penner.
Yeah, please explain yourself on this one.
Greg Penner had to agree to write the largest check in the history of sports for a future Hall of Fame quarterback to not play for the team.
Now, Dante doesn't think.
We're going to argue about it later.
Okay, yeah. Look at you, Dante.
I think Russell Wilson will ultimately end up in the Hall of Fame. We'll remember the decade of great play, but that's a conversation for a different day. Maybe we can yell about that tomorrow. But it takes a unique kind of owner.
Yeah.
Because a lot of owners would say, dude, we just traded a first-round pick for you, Sean. You have a quarterback here that you knew was going to be here when you inherited him. This isn't not a surprise. And no, I'm not writing a check for him to go play for the Steelers. You need to make this work, and if it doesn't work, we'll eventually move on. But the fact that he wrote the largest check in NFL history for a potential future Hall of Fame quarterback to not play for your team, unless you make that decision, you're not drafting Bo Nix. So I think you can make that argument that Bo Nix
I didn't think of it like that,
or
Zach.
Sean Payton is not in Denver.
You know, and I really didn't. I was ready for an argument because it's like I didn't really think of it like that. And with the wording, it's like you explain why you said what you said about Greg Penner being the reason why Bo Nix is here. Because I was gonna say no, this was a Sean doing. Sean saying, hey, Greg, trust me. You just pay me all this money. Let me do my job. Let me go out there and get Bo Nix. You sit back. You be the CEO. And a coach is only as good as the coaches around him. An owner is only as good as the people around him. At some point, to take the step back like we just talked about and let everybody work. Let everybody do their job. Trust the process. And I think that's what Greg Penner did. And for Sean, it's like, let me go out there and get the quarterback that I think can make us all successful.
Yeah. And here's Greg Penner himself in the locker room after the football game.
You guys have accomplished a lot this season, and there's something in life about always going higher than what people think you can do. Again, couldn't be more proud of you all. This front office, coaching staff, this is an incredible group, and we're privileged to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, something stuck out to me there, and this is why I wanted to play that. This is the guy who is writing everyone's checks in that room. So if you could hear the sound of Greg Penner's voice, he is writing your check.
That's crazy to think. That's crazy to think.
It is.
Millions of dollars.
Yes.
One man's doing.
Yes. And so if you're standing in that room and there's dozens and dozens and dozens of people, they're football players and coaches, and you're the richest owner in the NFL. What did he say? It's a privilege for us to be a part of this. It's not like you guys are privileged as Denver Broncos. I'm the billionaire, and I'm privileged to be a part of this.
That's humble. That's being humble. That's
bingo.
Understanding. That's understanding how things work.
Phil, I was literally going to use that is a next level layer of humility to bring yourself as peers and looking these guys in the eye. He's not just a big fat pocket owner. There's one in Carolina, and you don't get this. There's no humility with David Tepper. There is a unique brand of humility with Greg Penner.
And it's special. And that's why I feel like, and I don't want to speak for you, but I'm going to speak for you because you said it at some point this week where you're like, you can close your eyes and envision Sean Payton and Bo Nix winning us a Super Bowl. But it starts with the ownership group. It starts with Greg Penner believing in the people he is hiring to take that step back and enjoy what's going on, to be a part of it, but to be humble. And know that, yes, like I have a lot to do with it. I have the money. I'm putting us in great situations. I'm getting ready to build us a different facility. I'm putting money on the grass that we're running on. But you guys are the reason why we're able to do all this. You guys are the ones, the heartbeat of this organization.
Phil, it's deflecting the credit.
Yeah.
It's deflecting the credit. And that's, in my opinion, that is the best kind of leadership. Is the ones who gives it right back. That's someone like you bringing your offensive line. I know I tease you about it, but like bringing your offensive line up. That's
thinking about everybody else but yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, he even took time to stop and talk with you, Zach, at some point. Was it this year, last year?
Yeah, this summer.